It's time to start.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Stanley's Stinkers, a unique look at college football where we pick the losers. That's right, the losers. Each week we'll look at 20 of the biggest games, we'll break down the teams, we'll analyze the coaches, and we might even flirt with the cheerleaders. But in the end, we'll predict the losers, or in this case, the stinkers in each of the contests. Stay tuned because this week's games are coming up. Well, the 2012 college football season is winding on down and the number of undefeated teams continues to dwindle. Two more lost their quest for perfection last week, and with those losses, our record took a hit as well. We were 14-6 last week, bringing our overall mark to 78%. That's really not bad, though, when you consider the fact that we don't back down from the big games. We use reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football. Here are the games that show up this week on the Stinkometer. Arkansas at Mississippi State. Well, a few short weeks ago, the Bullpups from Starkville were among the litter of perfect teams, but 3 consecutive losses have put the Believers back in the dog pound. Arkansas, meanwhile, is doing their best to recover from a dismal beginning. 2 more wins for the Piggies, and then the next step would be a bowl game to salvage some pride from a tumultuous season. These teams are headed in the opposite direction, and it's hard to pick a winner, but Stanley's stinker is Mississippi State. Jacksonville State at Florida. The Swamp Lizards had to rely on some last-minute heroics last week to prevent an upset at the hands of what should have been a lesser opponent. The same type of game awaits Florida this week. The frenzied fowl from North Alabama will be in the Swamp this week, and while they do have some big wins in their past, this ain't going to be one of them. Look for Florida to feast on some Southern fried chicken, pass the gravy. Stanley Stinker, Jacksonville State. Georgia Southern at Georgia. Well, these two teams have represented the state of Georgia well throughout the years, but it's the Eagles of GSU who have more titles in the last 3 decades than the Silver Slack Canines. Georgia Southern has 6 FCS titles since the Bulldogs won their last in the upper division. And yes, Georgia still does have an outside chance at the BCS championship this year, but first they need to dispose of their cousins from Statesboro. Stanley Stinker, Georgia Southern. Stanford at Oregon. The Quackers from Oregon are one of the last 3 unbeaten teams in the BCS race, and if they want a chance to play for the Crystal Trophy, they have to get past the stingy Cardinal team. Stanford's defense is first in the country in rushing yards allowed, but they are 102nd in passing yards allowed. For Oregon to win, they'll have to throw the ball, and that shouldn't be hard for Marcus Mariota. The flying Hawaiian threw 6 touchdown passes last week, and he hasn't thrown an interception in a month of Saturdays. Stanley Stinker, Stanford. Alabama A&M at Auburn. This is a rare trip for the Bulldogs of Huntsville, Alabama, as they travel down Highway 431 to Auburn for a football game. It might be the last if they embarrass the Striped Cats or their home scratching post. Despite the fact that these two teams play in vastly different leagues, the rules are still the same and the field is still just 100 yards long. So the visiting team from the SWAC does have a chance, but not much. Stanley Stinker, Alabama A&M. USC at UCLA. This game is for the Pac-12 South Division lead. The winner will have a chance to go to the conference championship and play Oregon. The Bruins actually have a better record, but USC has some splaining to do. The men of Troy were supposed to compete for the championship this year, but all they can do now is keep their last 3 opponents out of the championship games. If USC wins, they'll play Notre Dame and then Oregon, but first, they've got to win this one. If Lane Kiffin doesn't have deflated balls again, it could be the perfect spoiler in the BCS. Stanley Stinker, UCLA. Well, that is it, the end of the first half of Stanley Stinkers. We've got more to come, though, including a freeze warning in Baton Rouge, the battle for the bragging rights in Tennessee, a flasher alert, and the slap heard round the world. All that and more coming up next on Stanley Stinkers. Stanley Stinkers is brought to you every week by CBSSports.com Fan Shop. Now that Christmas is on the way, the sports fan on your list would love to have a jersey or a hat from their favorite team. You'll find that and more at CBSSports.com Fan Shop. Click on the link on our sponsors page for CBSSports.com Fan Shop. By Passion by Eve. The cool weather and short days means more time for romance. Guys, don't let the chance to make sparks get away. From lotions to potions and things that go buzz in the night, there is definitely something there for every relationship. And ladies, if you book your passion party now, you'll qualify for even more rewards and gifts. That's Passion by Eve. Check them out, passionbyeve.com. By 5 Front PR. Mike and the guys at 5 Front PR know how to help any business, just like they did Stanley Stinkers. When it's time to take your business from the forefront all the way to the 5 Front, call 5 Front PR. And by Russell Athletic. Now that hunting season is here, it's time to go camo, not commando, camo. Check out the latest lines of camo from the outdoors to the indoors and everywhere underneath. Russell Athletic. Check our sponsors page for the link. And fans, don't forget to like Stanley Stinker's Facebook page for a glimpse inside the Stinkometer every Saturday. We'll have insights and highlights all day long on Stanley Stinker's Facebook page. Tell your friends to meet you there. Ole Miss at LSU. First-year coach Hugh Freeze will be staring across the field at the man they call the Mad Hatter, and if the Insurgents want an upset, they'll have to play it cool against a team that's been known to play down to their opponents. LSU might still be reeling from that loss to Alabama at home, but while Ole Miss needs one more win to make it to a bowl game, the Bayou Bengals just want to finish the season. Stanley Stinker, LSU in an upset. Tennessee at Vanderbilt. This might be the swan song for Derek Dooley. The Rifleman's coach lost in 4 overtimes last week and barely has one win in his last 5 games. Add to that the fact that he's winless in the conference again this year, and it's easy to see why Dooley is done in Knoxville. Consecutive wins to end the year would keep the proud Volunteers from having a losing record, but that task might be too much. Vanderbilt continues the rise in the state of Tennessee, but it's just another rung on the ladder this week. Stanley Stinker, Tennessee. Sam Houston State at Texas A&M. Johnny Football and his Aggie teammates are probably still grinning after they went to Alabama last week and snatched away the Tide's perfect season. But they'll need to focus on one game at a time if they hope to hang on to their top 10 ranking. The Bearcats from Huntsville, Texas can't be taken lightly. They were FCS runners-up last year and only have 2 losses this year. But that won't be enough to stop these Aggies. Stanley Stinker, or Sam Houston State. Wake Forest at Notre Dame. The Leprechauns have held on to the perfect record through some pretty tight spots this season, and if the stats are any indication, this game shouldn't be too hard for the Irish. But we've been there before, haven't we? Wake Forest has 5 wins, and the Demon Deacons have shown steady improvement throughout the year. For Wake Forest to have a prayer in this one, they'll need to catch Notre Dame sleeping through the sermon and thinking about their next game. That's probably not going to happen. Stanley Stinker, Wake Forest. And while we're at it, here are a few more games that show up this week on the Stinkometer. Look for Wofford to get pecked by South Carolina. Western Carolina will be trampled by Alabama. You can call it Bowling Green getting flashed by Kent State. North Carolina will get scratched by Clemson. Maryland will be shelled by Florida State. I think that Cal will be bitten by Oregon State. Troy will lose to Arkansas State. Syracuse will be stopped by Missouri. Samford will pull off the upset of Kentucky. And in a battle of the headsets, look for Texas Tech to slap Oklahoma State. Stanley Stinkers is intended for entertainment only. A free podcast and blog is available online at stanleystinkers.com. You can also like us on Facebook for a chance to see inside the Stinkometer every Saturday. Insights and highlights all day long on Stanley Stinker's Facebook page. Stanley Stinkers is a production of Gramagdala Sports. Any rebroadcast, republication, or other use of Stanley Stinkers without the express written permission of me, Stanley Stinkowich, is appreciated. Join us again next week as we use reverse prognostication to predict the losers in college football's biggest game.